The Japanese are not going to get the Kuril Islands back. Iran's not going to recover pieces or take pieces of Azerbaijan, and so on. Why? Because if there were any attempt at doing that, it would galvanize the hitherto fragmented Russian army, and you would have a kind of national consensus overnight that Russia is in need of defense. So I don't think we will see pieces flying off Russia.
But is it leading to something? In another way, put it in another way, was the situation a year ago or 2 years ago more dangerous, or did something develop in a positive way, or do you see it developing in a negative way? In other words, is this continuing putsch getting more and more dangerous, or is it by the time fading down?
Let's say we're all Democrats here, okay? Let's say that what we respect about other countries is their evolution towards democratic methods. It's, after all, their business. Maybe well, you'll still hear it in the background. I can disconnect this one. Shall we disconnect? All right. Okay, we want to roll again?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just say we respect other countries to choose what they want to do internally, so long as they don't expand, offend their neighbors. So I think what people in the West should be looking to in Russia is the speed at which Russia acquires democratic methods and some consensus supporting democracy here. Now, right now, you'd have to be very pessimistic about democratic methods. Why? Because a year ago, the government destroyed the parliament. A year ago, the government instituted the dismissal or suspension, the temporary dismissal of the highest legal body in the land after that body declared the government's action illegal. So you have neither rule of law, nor do you have constitutionality, as this would be known in any other country.
Yeah, but was the former parliament or the former Congress, was that an institution of democracy? Isn't it leading to democracy? Is that possible without shedding blood?
Well, this is a complicated question, and I think it's now a historical question. We could argue beyond the patience of anyone listening on this question. In my view, the chances for democracy in Russia depend on a balance being struck by multiple interests. And the most effective way to represent those interests is through a federal parliament. The government, in combination with the parliament, respecting constitutional law, strikes a balance of power, whose stability is the guarantee that everybody will stay in the game, that nobody will be so threatened as to resort to arms to protect themselves or to advance their interest. That balance was precarious last year, and at one point, one side resorted to violence. That means that it could happen again. But I think we've tried to explain why the present conditions don't favour a violent attempt to change the transfer of power now. I think what is happening is that people are trying to, the opposition, the regional groups are trying to change the transfer of property in their favour. And they're doing this through lobbying means, non-violent means, and, if you like, eating away inside the government itself. That's democratic by 18th century standards. What you're asking is for me to predict what would happen next, or how we should view this process. And I think we should have a very simple set of standards for viewing what's happening in Russia. Is the Constitutional Court in operation? Are judges genuinely independent of political power? Is the state prosecutor enjoying the confidence of Parliament? Is there a rule of law in this country?
Yes, but if we're talking about independence of the court, for example,
Yeah.
in the constitution, then you could say that there is some sort of positive development, because in the past the court's independence wasn't at all guaranteed. There is some sort of constitution which, in words, guarantees democracy,
Correct.
guarantees freedom.
Well, there was a... Let's put it this way. This constitution is different from the last one. Both of them provided guarantees. The last constitution was simply suspended and then replaced. And in no country, democratic country in the world that I can think of, is a democratic constitution adopted within 12 weeks. Okay? It's inconceivable that you adopt a constitution so quickly. What then does that give the Constitutional Court as a basis for interpreting?
Yeah, but isn't it the basis? Isn't it the start?
Well, Russia keeps restarting. There was, and we're restarting again. Okay, so what sort of a start have we got right now? Well, right now we have no constitutional court. We have the senior legal officer of the country who does not enjoy the confidence of Parliament. We have a couple of regional wars that are serious in their implications. We have a budget that is not honoured by the government. We have a budget process, the fundamental problem of how you gather revenue and how you spend it, which is not subject to law. Go to if you like, the leader of the opposition in this country is the chairman of the budget committee of the lower house of Parliament, or the several chairmen of the economic committees, Mr. Glaziev, a former trade minister, Mr. Zadornov, who's the chairman of the budget committee. These gentlemen are the leaders of the opposition of this country right now. Why? Because they are trying to hold the government accountable for its method of raising funds and its method of spending funds. Does anyone in the West realize the way in which money is being spent here? What happens is simply this. Constitution prescribes that Parliament, like anywhere else, should authorize the spending of money for purposes. But a separate provision, and this is required in Constitution, this is allowable under the Russian Constitution. But the Constitution also allows a contradictory provision. The government may not spend if it's judged that it doesn't have the revenue. Since the government puts up revenue estimates which are greater than the government gets in taxes, people have stopped paying tax in this country, then the government decides, since it doesn't have the money it thought, what it won't spend money on. This is entirely discretionary, or, if you like, arbitrary, or, if you like, anti-democratic. Now, what Parliament would like to do is to make government accountable to the people for the way it spends its money. What government would like to do is to make everybody come to the government's door with the hand out, and thereby maintain its control over the various lobbies. Very understandable tactics of the government. Very understandable tactics of Parliament. But this is the nature of a democratic struggle. Who shall control the resources of the country? This creates, in my view, a very different perception of who the opposition are and what their tactics are and will be. It also changes the way I think Westerners should view Russia. Ask yourself not what Mr. Rudskoy is saying in Moscow to a barrage of cameramen. Ask what is the government prepared to do to honour its budget agreements. Ask, is Russia paying tax? Ask, does the government consult the Parliament on how it should spend money? If your answers to these questions are, I don't know what's going on, I don't know,